Yeah, hi Ted.
Hello.
Hey, Ted.
We were just
We
talking
made it.
about the presentation and its impact, and I know that you're directing this at people who are in the midst of spiritual crisis, really, or in that sort of process. But I'm assuming, I could be wrong, but all of the faculty that were on that call have sort of been through something like that. They've had their own awakenings and processes, and so what I hadn't thought of was how your piece and work sort of remind you of the experience of going through that process. And the I imagine we're never really done with that process, but so we're in it, but it's so for all of the faculty, I think that it was just something that it was kind of like a recognition kind of thing. And that recognition, when it comes at you in a sort of deep way, is quite moving because it's something that has changed your life. You're not the same person. And so so it has, your piece also has this effect on people who kind of come through the processes you're talking about as well. It's
Exactly. Yeah. I know. I mean, when, Lisa specifically, her words were resonating, to me in that way, because it took me back to, remembering, the struggle, remembering those hard parts and remembering those moments that were just so profound. And, for someone, I guess maybe, the vibration from her was exactly what you're saying, was that she had been there before,
right.
And to connect with someone who has been there before and knows what it means, knows how transcendental and how life-changing it is, that really, it just resonates in a different way, And it was such a profound and continues to be such a profound experience for me. And to be able to translate, I mean, you and I have talked about how hard it is to translate this experience, but, for the sentiment to at least come off to some in the way that I intended, was,
right.
it was like, yeah, okay, that's what, for, so, and I really, it just really touched me because, I couldn't stress enough how this whole process has really been, void of kind of, myself and my own ego, and really trying to do something for others, really, and not just in the piece, but in my life, so it really, that really touched me, So.
By the way, I wanted to let you know that Jules told me afterwards that was the best culminating project presentation she's ever seen.
Wow. Oh, bless her.
Unlike me, she's seen many. So
right.
So she's speaking with a certain kind of authority.
Right.
She was telling you had good karma.
Oh, right. Good karma,
Camara. Robin in this case.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that'll probably run out pretty soon, but we'll see. But she said particularly not just the effect of your presentation on her, but the effect she observed on the other faculty. She's not observed such an effect on the other faculty like that before. So
well, that's good, man. Mission accomplished, at least, Mission accomplished.
Yeah. Well, I guess we're here to wrap it up, and I know we're basically down to the.
Am I coming in late?
No.
Oh, okay.
We just got talking, basically.
Oh, no, he's talking about wrapping up the whole process, not the call.
Okay.
Okay. Writing process, the culminating project process. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, because you guys had already been in a flow before I got on. So.
Oh, no.
I was concerned.
No. And from my point of view, okay, so here's, may as well just sort of get things out on the table. Where I'm really bad is that, colleges and everything require these kinds of things in specific formats, with, the right formats for citations, the right format for the cover pages and things like that. I'm terrible at that shit because I couldn't care less about it. So don't rely on me. Don't rely on me to make you get that right. I think that's going to have to be between you and Angie or something like that. I mean, if it looks good to her, formatting wise, then I think that's great.
I think that you're able to get a copy editor through her.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Now I haven't done a whole lot of these myself, and so I'm going, but I do them. I've done them for a long time at another school, and everyone uses a copy editor. I'm recalling the last person that I did she's a lawyer who was able, one of those rare people who could do her own APA copy editing. And so in your case, I am noticing so far, I haven't been giving you exhaustive critique, and I'll go into that in a second, in terms of the APA, but your paper isn't, problematic. So in other words, I think that it can be done cheaply. You have a very finished product even before Robin's comments. I'm putting mine on top of his, so I'm using that draft. So anyway, just shoot out an email to her about their list of copy editors.
Because you think someone needs to go through it with like a fine-tooth comb or something?
That's my understanding. That's just a part of, in other words, it's, while it's not a master's thesis, it's going through the motions.
Right.
And also it's so that the student comes out with a perfect product. In other words, you could immediately, if you wanted to, turn it to somewhere for publication without you having to potentially work it over. If you did, they would immediately be more interested in you as a writer because of what they're seeing in terms of its quality before they, put their editorial hands on it. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So there's that aspect. That there's this. What do you call it? The technical, logistical aspect. Now we've been going back and forth for months on the writing, and I feel like I've had my say. So I don't have any major comments, and I don't think this is the stage to make major shifts. However, I mean, if we were still in an ongoing process, I would still be pressing you on the significance of creativity, which I don't think it shines out yet out of the written paper. With respect to the transpersonal, there's some connection there between the transpersonal and creativity. Hence becoming creative in the midst of a transformative process is significant. In the sense that, for me, it is in a way its own tapping into its own source in the transpersonal. So it's creativity is almost like a form of communication between the transpersonal and you. But I think you personally could take that much further if you wanted to. But I don't want to insist on that. I just, if we were going further, then I would sort of, because I'm only interested in doing things that are useful for you, not in terms of like getting things correct or whatever. So that's where I would go with it. But I don't think it's necessary. In terms of the document for me is pretty much great, just as it is. It's just if we had more time, if we were still in an ongoing process, which I don't really feel like we are, then I would then I would push you more on that, just so that you know.
Right.
But I don't know what kind of feedback Ted has, and Ted hasn't had the opportunity for feedback until now. So this is what we mostly need to hear, I think, today. Yeah.
So do you think, before we get to that, Robin, do you think that maybe, adding some more of the creativity and the relationship between that and the transcendental and its significance is something to, that would be worth taking a stab at, to interject some more in there, even in this?
Well, I just want to push you further on making that connection more for you. If you see what I mean? So I'm using the writing as an excuse in a way. We have been using the writing as an excuse because it's been pulling together your experience. It's been integrating your experience, kind of making it real in a way, more here, more present in this world, kind of thing. And this connection to the creative, a person going through the shift of, as you've called it, from the personal to the transpersonal. It seems to me creativity is some kind of very key integral part of it. I mean, just talking about myself, I wouldn't have considered myself a creative person, but in the process of becoming more transpersonal, you like more spiritual, I noticed that I became creative. In other words, it's like it started to, in my own way, sort of thing. And so it's like opening it's like the same door or a very related door, creativity and this transpersonal, and it's like they come together, they go together. So for me, there's something very significant there, because I look out the window at the mountain outside my window, and I'm like, this is creativity, right? This is creation, and we're involved in creation. When you wrote that piece, you're involved in creation, same as in the creation of the mountain range here and all of the nature. To me, it's that same sort of force, or there are many sort of what I call fingers pointing at the moon, little signs and signals that tell you about the transpersonal, that tell you about God, if you like. And creativity coming through a person is one of those. And so it seems to me that it's some very significant relationship between going from the personal to the transpersonal and becoming a much more intrinsically creative person. You started out creative, but it's like then it got applied. It got applied to this. It got inspired, stimulated by this process that you were in. And the poetry that you wrote, I mean, it's coming through you. Where's it coming from? You see what I mean? It's like if ever there was like a kind of voice of God or something, then it seems to me that shows.
So it's a question, Robin, you're seeing that it's a question of more details needing to be filled in, and then maybe occasional references to transpersonal authors talking about that?
I'm not sure if it's detail. It's actually really making that connection, really making that.
Yeah, I guess that's what I meant by those details.
Yes. Yeah. It's like you just, it doesn't, I know you got it, Camara. It just doesn't shine through out of the written piece.
Right.
Currently, that's all. And so it's like, I really wanted you to sort of nail that down. It's like, creativity it's not like just a kind of aid in this process. It's not just kind of like a support or something like that, or it's completely intrinsic to the journey from the personal to the transpersonal, I think. I mean, it itself is the signal that you're on that journey. And so it's like there's something very deep, maybe you call it philosophical significance, or in true creativity, what I call true creativity. So in other words, not creativity to try and please anybody, but creativity that you're letting come through you. At that point, that's almost like prayer or something. That is, so it's utterly interfused with the whole process of awakening. Seems to me. But hey, that's just me. I wanted you to come to your sort of own sort of deep sort of synthesis of the role of creativity, or in the process that you were in. It's I know it was a great sort of comfort, a great outlet, and all this stuff, but I feel like the significance is actually more profound than that.
Well, actually, it was a saving grace, to be truthfully honest. The
Right.
saving grace, because it was through that, on two different perspectives, in creating as well as acknowledging other creations that, provided the inspiration to allow for the process to occur. So, okay. All right. Well,
it almost is the process, right? It almost is the process. The creativity almost is the process. It's creativity in motion. That's what we're talking about here, is creativity in motion. So it's like to sort of pull it apart and just, it's like you can't really sort of separate it from the process that you were in.
Right.
Yeah. But so that's just my thing. I just, you're going to go into the world continuing to be creative, and it matters what you think about it. It matters what you think you're doing. And
then that you'll be able to transmit that more easily through your teaching about creativity, or more potently, beyond you being the message, itself. Okay, so are we making the segue?
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
So I have to start with a confession and an apology. So my partner was in a catastrophic car accident 3 years ago, and that caused me to have to make some certain choices, which actually led me to AU. And at times, actually, like the project that you and I started together, Robin, there's ebbs and flows for when it completely consumes my attention. And so I apologize, but I've only been able to get 2/3 of the way through your final paper. And yet it's completely familiar to me so far from, a previous reading and the proposal, right? So if I could, at the very least, perhaps we can schedule something. It doesn't necessarily need to be all three of us in, I could do it tomorrow to wrap up comments, but I can only go so far today. So I'm 2/3 of the way in, so I'm sorry about that. However, what Robin's saying, it doesn't surprise me given, what I've seen so far, which is just to say that there are places where it's not talking around, but talking about something in a way where what you're saying is clear, but it would be wonderful to hear more of the details in it. So in other words, making kind of a mention of an aspect of transformation without, as Robin put it, nailing it down a little further, of what was really impactful to you. So you're going to see that I'll have comments and things in text in what I'm putting together for you. That said, you took on an ambitious way to do a culminating project, where there's that whole thing that Robin was bringing up of, there's enough here. And so when I looked at your paper, so far, I have the same impression that I did with your piece. It's like, for AU, it is in itself enough, and I mean that in a very good way. But the impression that I keep getting is, oh, this would be so great in its next iteration. Like all I see are wonderful seeds that are gonna like more fully blossom with each piece. Now, interestingly, the place where I'm at, I'm just starting the creative part, 2/3 in. So I can't comment then directly on what Robin's saying here. So you're going to see that some of my comments are along the same lines as with the video in terms of talking to you about the future, which is so much fun. In your case, where things are going. Because there's, for example, there's a huge chunk that's not described in there in terms of your experiential journey. There's like a good amount of detail, and then several years went by. I'd have to go back to see the exact quote, but perhaps you remember in your paper, where you, I wouldn't use the word gloss over. It's just that there's just not enough space in the AU version to describe more deeply, meaning the details of certain years, right? That you basically kind of fast forwarded through. And so the wonderful thing about it being at this stage is, again, I think you'll have no problem in terms of publication, where a different version of this would be in a book proposal, because I definitely see a book here.
I was joking with him about that. I'm making you write a book. Come on.
Yeah, pretty much. That's what I'm saying to you, is that there's a book here begging to be done in conjunction with these out, potentially around the same time or at the same time, complementing each other. And given what you do, it wouldn't surprise me if a part of what you put together over time is also a workbook for your students. You know what I mean? Like yet another piece that fits within that, right? That's shorter than the book, but purely experiential and pragmatic for them for the most part. And then of course you can refer to your book in the workbook. So
Ted,
let's see.
Ted,
yep.
I don't know if Camara agrees with this, but part of this process over the last couple of months that he and I have been through has been, there's been cleaning up and cleaning up meaning and stuff like that, but there's also been a substantial process of adding in detail. So certain sections have gotten really much more detailed. And of course, there's still more that's needed, but I'm like, at some point we have to stop.
Exactly. And so that's what I see here, is that everything that I'm saying has nothing to do really with what's needed to wrap things up here. And again, that's my the impression is similar to the work that you've already presented. In other words, I didn't much feel the need to say, how well done things are. Like I see all the work that you two have put in. And so within its AU framework, it's really well done. So forgive me for not kind of going into detail there, because like the visual work, it all sort of speaks for itself. And so I don't feel the need to go to the detail of how good what you have there is, because I don't usually speak so forcefully to a student about strongly considering how they follow up once they leave us. So
it shouldn't end here.
Right. I'm very excited by what's not there that is alluded to. Let's see. I mean, I suppose the only noticeable critique that I have is that your abstract reads more like an introduction rather than an academic abstract. And again, I don't know, in your case, I'm sort of wondering how, how to go forward with this. It's one of those things of, if you, by the way, are you thinking of getting a doctorate? or an MF. Do you have an MFA?
No, I don't. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. No, that hadn't been in the plan actually. That's that
Yeah,
was
I
really a
don't think it's
desire of mine.
necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
And so therefore, if you were doing that, I would have you rewrite the abstract.
mhm.
And you're going to see comments, because it feels more like a kind of introduction rather
Mhm.
than a really terse,
Mhm.
description.
Right. Hmm.
Yep. That's essentially very sort of pragmatic and detail packed.
Mhm.
Um, so there you go. Let's see. Um, is there, for the first 2/3, and by that I mean not the appendices, is there anything you're wondering about your own paper that might be good to talk to me about?
No, it's I hear exactly what you're saying, and it's the journey is so dense, and it's kind of like for the purposes of doing what I needed to do for the requirements. I mean, there's so much more that I could do, but in keeping with kind of what the goal is of this particular piece,
Exactly.
it didn't seem that that was necessary. So,
No.
but having
Yeah.
said that, though, I kind of felt this, and I even felt this, in the class that I had with you before I started this process, that this was an introduction to what was going to come after.
Yeah.
And he kind of set the precedent, and kind of in I think through the process, what Robin has really helped me with is feeling comfortable to bring out some of these things that are actually very sensitive to even talk about. I mean, and I think that when the references to getting to details was really about me feeling comfortable enough to really expose that as it was for what it was, which is a very hard thing to do sometimes for a lot of different reasons. But at the same time, it's been necessary. So my hope is that, throughout this process, I mean, this definitely is not this is just the
Do you
beginning.
sense that you want to have a book?
Yeah, I mean, that was all. Yeah, that was all the idea, in doing this project. When I started AU 11 years ago, that was the idea, having a film and having, that was it. But I didn't at that point know how that was going to come together, so obviously, it wasn't until now, and even through this process, things weren't clear until a certain point. And I think a lot of it, speaking of creativity flowing through, was feeling okay with being able to, first of all, see I was trying to do two things. I was trying to create something that could inspire, but then also heal, at the same time, so, and sometimes the duty or the sense to serve was more important than, or to serve and to heal through serving was more important than focusing on the healing process. It's kind of like one came as a result of the other. And that was kind of my thinking. Yeah. So one of the challenges that I felt in presenting this is that I was keeping in my mind, what do I need to say to get my point across? And I'm trying to create something that is to inspire those who are dealing with this struggle, as opposed to what do I need to do for myself? Because I'm still going through it anyway, so.
Right.
But having said that, your comments are, say it.
Same.
Yeah.
It's the same. I wouldn't make any distinction between those two things.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
What you need to share to serve is what you need to share for you.
Right.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you've just prompted me. I knew that there was something major to come back around to, which is Robin's point about creativity and why there might be a lot more there, that maybe you might only add a paragraph before you're done, but then it would become a major piece. which is in the work that I've done, the research and experience around Kundalini awakening and the Kundalini process. So getting back to the energy that Robin was talking about around with creativity, is that if people are having problems with their Kundalini process, they can manifest in, you remember your spiritual crisis course. So that when people engage their lives creatively, often the crisis or parts of it, they don't realize it, but it's because their creativity is blocked.
Exactly.
And a part of the core descriptor, there's like a handful of core descriptor words for spiritual energy. One of them would be spontaneous creativity. And so when something like that is blocked, it can cause physical or mental illness or distress. And so, so on the one hand, it helps people to engage that when they're in the process. On the other hand, people spontaneously, it's a major tendency, become creative or more creative through the Kundalini process, through that kind of awakening. And then there are people who spiritually awaken where they wouldn't necessarily self-describe Kundalini being a part of it. But in my view, sort of underneath every, like Groff's transpersonal typology, underneath all of those things is whatever we want to call it, prana, spiritual energy, and how it is working through the subtle and physical human body to be able to express, relates to people experiencing those things. And so, again, it's sort of like no matter how you look at it, creativity is a major point. So somewhere in there, maybe that might be helpful to unlock, a little bit more of what you might say about creativity that Robin's talking about. I'm not sure because, I haven't reviewed again the pieces. So anyway, was any of that helpful?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's funny because, in this process, Kundalini was part of my practice. Kundalini yoga was my practice.
Is that in the paper?
It's not. It's not. It's not. I to be truthfully honest.
So you have a lot to put in the book. So it's great.
Yeah, there's a lot that's not there.
Yeah.
Which, I don't think. I think I had it actually in an earlier version, and then I took it out because I don't know why. This paper has gone in so many different directions.
Look at the image behind you. It's an explosion of color. So when people have these major eruptions, they can often describe explosions of energetic color. Yep. Oh, okay. Here's another piece. This is parenthetical, but for your book, it may not be. So in my view, one of the major things that's missing in most transpersonal psychological dialogue, this isn't the right place to kind of go into the why, but as a methodology, movement, intense movement. So in other words, exactly what you said, catalyzing your spiritual process, the actual doing of the carnival, that there are practices, as that are done on a weekly and monthly basis in tribal cultures that go beyond what Western ecstatic dance people do. Often they may do a 3-hour thing that's very profound and life-changing. But when you're doing it in a community with built community power and different people having different functions around both healing and raising this energy, and then doing it for whatever it might be, 8 or 12 hours, right? Of that kind of, frenzied movement. It is a major healing modality that is missing from transpersonal psychology largely. And I think that it needs to become eventually as basic as meditation. And so take that take that with you in terms of linking, your awakening at the carnival dance, that's whatever you want to call it, sub-awakening, right? One of several. And how that too is linked to creativity, because you were doing spontaneous, I'm guessing, is it choreographed and spontaneous, or pure spontaneous
It's
dancing?
spontaneous. It's pure spontaneous.
Right. So
well, it is choreographed in the sense that there is a specific like there's an order, like, okay, the king, for certain areas, the Shagata it's spontaneous. When the caboclo makes the arrival to the community, that's a spontaneous thing. What is choreographed is the moments at which he arrives. Like, there are calls for him to come, there are calls for him to stop, there are calls, those kinds of things. Those are kind of choreographed. But in carnival, that's choreographed in the sense that the procession always follows a certain order, but how the caboclo expresses himself and dances is how he dances. That's spontaneous, but there is an order to it.
Notice how also this whole process called for exactly both kinds of movement and creativity. And this is true within spiritual practice. There are the ones, that are around stillness, right? To create, then transformation, and then movement. And so you were doing the beads and you were told you have to slow way down, right? And then the very opposite, at the culmination of all of that particular kind of creativity, right? To bring it all into extended, continuous motion. So yeah, it's funny. This is just the way I'm wired. I totally have a doctoral direction for you in that, in terms of your book. I mean, put aside the doctorate, because you don't need it for, what you may do with your book. Do you know, in English, has anyone written on, the spiritual nature of that full process? You know what I mean? From the making, through the dance. Has anyone done that?
Okay, you mean speaking of Maracatu in that way? I mean, they have in because Maracatu is related to Candomblé, and there has been some documentation of Candomblé and experience, and there are relationships between the two. They're coming from the same place. And dance kind of in a Kundalini, way, is done the same way. But the experiences they're different, and the kind of background is a little different, but they are related. Has
anyone done a book in English?
I don't know.
And so you don't need to go the doctorate route, that this is potentially a fundamental contribution with what you're thinking about, doing it in your own way, of course, showing this particular, a way of awakening. And then on top of that, I mean, this part would be more scholarly, but nonetheless, there are ways you can do it without that, where you're taking things that are in Portuguese and, translating them. So I'm sure there's some juiciness out there that in this day and age, you can, without, I don't know, are you fluent in Portuguese? I don't know.
No, I'm not. I should.
Okay.
No, I'm not. Yeah.
But you don't need to be, there are any number of ways to crack, helping bridge, the English speaking world and the Portuguese speaking world in this particular way. There's something really fun there. And if somehow you go in some totally unexpected direction and do that, you have a ready-made, easy route for a doctoral contribution, right here with what you're doing. So that's fun too.
Interesting. Yeah.
Maybe you'll inspire someone to do that work. It's not meant for you, but I can imagine you inspiring someone yeah, to go down their own road in that way.
Cool. Interesting to think of. Yeah, definitely.
So if you're interested, I don't know what your schedule generally looks like, but do you have a little bit of time tomorrow?
Tomorrow, yeah, in the afternoon.
What
I
time?
do. Let's see. Around this time, actually.
Okay, so
Time.
I've written down that at noon I will have finished what I should have had for you at this point, so that I can give you any further things verbally that might be necessary.
Okay.
And yeah, Robin, can you think of anything like a direction of talking about his work that I haven't done? Even though I'm only 2/3 in.
No, I think you're. It feels like you're zeroing in on sort of key areas, I would say. I don't imagine what you have to say is going to change much with the further reading that you have to do, but
exactly, that's the good news,
right? So but what do you, just to be clear, what do you have any sense of what you would like from Camara in terms of completing the AU culminating project?
I'll be giving him those details, unfortunately, tomorrow, but I don't anticipate there's much of anything, because I'm not losing track of what he has fulfilled,
right,
and therefore just not needing to do what might be the case if he wasn't nearly so ambitious. Yeah.
Cool. So Ted, so will you, what Robin has done in the past is made notes to the Word file that I have, or included his comments in the Word file and just sent that.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing.
Okay, beautiful. Okay, yeah. So, and then I can just look at them, and then if I had questions, then they say, "Hey, man, I need to. What do you mean here?" Or what?
Right.
I'll ask Angie about the formatting detail thing that we talked about at the beginning, with the possibility of needing some kind of proofreader. Yeah,
it won't be a big deal. They're going to give you, like if they go through it, they only make changes that you approve. In other words, you go through the whole document saying accept or reject. You literally press buttons. Oh, okay. And then it makes, his or her changes automatic for you. And they don't do what Robin and I are doing. It's purely, grammar and APA. Unless they see something highly unusually glaring that we missed.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So otherwise they let things go. Like they may have a thought, but they let it go.
And then at some point looks like there's a signature page. You've included a signature page. We'll be signing it, I guess, electronically, probably. I don't know, but
yeah, I don't know how. I guess Andrew will let me know.
Well, all you would do is once you are done with what the copy editor had to say, you turn it around to Robin, and he can choose, to just look through it, because he will have a copy from your copy editor. Usually they contact the professor saying, I've done this, and then, yeah, he would sign it, and then he'd pass it on to me. And then after that, I didn't realize, I've never seen the cover page where, the CEO is a part of the signature page.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was like a
and for it to be designated as CEO would be unusual for, you know what I mean, as opposed to it being normally that person wouldn't be on there at all. I'm trying to remember if Robin is supposed to pass this on to Tom.
Okay.
Should Tom be on that first signature page? Because that page right there was included in the that was taken from the supplemental documents they give each.
Go with that, because see, Tom may give it a quick once over and then pass it on.
Okay.
To the CEO.
Yeah.
Then it goes into an archive, the AU archive.
Right.
Big giant room with boxes stretching as far back as you can see now. I'm just
right. Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to check out the archive.
Okay. So you guys are going to meet tomorrow, and I'll write to Angie and possibly Tom, and we'll see what's needed to wrap it up. But it doesn't sound like a lot.
And I'll obviously be CCing Robin, and so I guess you can just quickly go through and look at my comments. And in the end, the way that I feel about this and wanting you to get it done is, if you have any questions, like if I basically just want to say, let Robin decide. I don't feel so strongly about what I have to say, where, Camara, if you're looking at something and saying, I don't know about this, and Robin's like, it doesn't seem important, go with what Robin has to say. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. In other words, I won't need to see it again based on what I'm seeing here. I won't need to see it again after you make your choices, because sometimes that's done, where you would submit it back to us.
Right.
But I don't feel that's needed, and Robin should be the kind of final say on my comments, along with you as well,
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so what time do you want to get together tomorrow?
Noon.
Noon? Okay, all right.
Noon.
Yep, and I'll get to my
noon your time. Yeah.
Pacific
time, yeah.
And then I'll get you the paper itself as soon as I'm able. I have a meeting from 2 to 4, and I'm going to, after we hang up, I'm going to keep working on it right now.
Okay, sounds good. Okie doke.
Okay, you guys.
All right. Hey, Robin, I know you've done this in the past, would it be too much to ask for you to send this recording that you made today?
No, it would not be too much to ask.
All right, because that'd be helpful. Then I can kind of get some of my thoughts
right
together. Okay.
Sounds good. I'll as soon as we're done, I'll start uploading it.
Okay. All right. Sounds great.
It takes a while because internet here is
right.
So.
Wow. Wow.
And Robin, do you have a moment after we hang up?
Yes.
Okay.
You want to stay on? Or?
Yeah, I'm just.
How does it work with the? I guess you're able to stop the recording, and so it won't interfere.
Right.
Doing that.
Well, I can edit it out too.
Yeah, and then I'll just.
Yes, I can stop the recording. Yeah, I can see the buttons up here. So yeah, I can stop as soon as Camara hangs up. I'll just stop it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right, guys. Thanks a bunch.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Talk to you soon.
You again, as usual.
Okay. You too. Okay. All right. Give CC my best. Oh, and I meant to ask Ted, how's the little one?
You're asking me?
I'm asking you. Yeah. How's the little one?
He came in earlier, but I, since I was already remiss for not having finished the work, I tried to act like he wasn't here, but they're doing well. I have 5 actually.
Right. Well, I think I remember during our class, you had a new one born.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a new one. Yeah, so that's what I remember. Yeah, I was, okay, how's the little one? So,
and I'm trying to remember which one would be which for that event. They came kind of close together.
I don't know how you do any of this, Ted, with 5 kids. That just like boggles my mind.
Well, one of the things that goes so far is the writing part.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep. But anyway, more on that.
Yeah. All right then, guys. Thanks a bunch. Talk to you soon.
You're welcome.
Okay. All
Bye
right.
for now.
Bye.